Good afternoon. Welcome to Tuesday Tidbits with Jerry Hinkle and
Hello.
me, Trinity. Okay, we're still in 1 Corinthians. Last week we was going to do chapter 7, but we kind of ended up too long on the end of chapter 6. So this week we are on chapter 7.
Yes, chapter 7. And Paul is going to talk to married people. And the reason he's going to talk to married people is chapter 7, verse 1. It says, "Now concerning the things whereof you wrote unto me, they ask." If you don't want to know, don't ask. Okay?
Yep.
And they wanted to know because there was a problem. And this can still pertain to us today because, Paul said in several instances in the Word, he talked about marriage is an honorable thing and the bed undefiled. He also talks about how that when a husband and wife, they don't come together in unity as far as prayer and stuff like that, their prayers are hindered because of a division.
Yep.
We also know that Paul refers to the church on the line of a husband and wife, and the husband and wife in kind of in line with the church. It's coming together. We are, so to speak, married to Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay? You see what he was talking about there? The church is a mystery? Go ahead.
I'm going to read the context. Dad just gave you a little bit of context, and I'm going to break it down a little bit more, and then we're going to dive into this, okay? So Paul's advice about marriage, divorce, and singleness comes as a response to something the Corinthians themselves wrote. Rather than taking this specific advice as instruction for all times and places, it's better to recognize that he is prompted by their comment to think about the way human relationships affect and reflect relationship with Jesus. His thoughts are partly shaped by his belief that Jesus' return is imminent. As far as we know, Paul does not have firsthand knowledge of marriage, and in one case, he is clear to state that he is offering his opinion rather than a command from the Lord. In thinking about the comment that the Corinthians have made in 7:1, Paul affirms the goodness and mutuality of sex and marriage. He goes on to recognize, though, that we can live in Jesus in many different life situations. It's not necessary to conform to one conventional standard. The way we live in our situations may serve as an example to draw others to Jesus.
Okay. Now, Paul in verse 2, he says that they ask, is it a good thing to not touch a woman? In other words, get married.
Yeah.
Okay? He says, nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife. Not everybody's wife, but his own. Okay?
Yeah.
And vice versa. Okay? Let every woman have her own husband.
Yeah.
Now you hearing this? We are in a society today where there is no honor and respect in the marriage covenant.
Yeah.
And I know there is some. There is some, but we see a lot of this: get married this week, divorce next week, get somebody else the next,
or just be promiscuous. Mm-hmm. That's the norm in today's society. There's no value in the vows and the covenant that you make with marriage. There's no coming together with the husbands and wives, because you've either got people, like Dad said, get married one week, divorce the next when it gets hard or whatever. There's no commitment there. There's no choosing each other, because that's what it is. Love is a choice, and it's choosing to show up. It's choosing to be there, whether the times are good or bad. So many times we base it on feeling. Well, they don't give me the butterflies anymore. Well, that's not love anyway. Love is a choice. You're choosing to show up, whether you've got butterflies or not.
Right.
And there's none of that. There's this, like you said, You get the people that are not committed, or you get the people that are just promiscuous and they're just going out and sleeping with every Tom, Dick, and Harry that comes about. And that's not good either.
No.
Because when you do that, you're giving more and more of yourself away. And this applies to men and women, because men, you may think, oh, I'm not giving myself away, but you are. You are. You may not be emotional, so to speak, as much as women are, but you're still giving a piece of yourself away, because that sexual relationship is meant to be in marriage alone.
Right. Solomon said, and this guy, holy cow, he had a lot of wives and a lot of concubines, but he said, you can't take fire into your bosom and not be burnt. And what was he saying? He said, you're not going to get away with it. You're going to get burnt.
Yeah.
And it ain't a thing of getting away with it. It's just common sense and walking in the Word. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times we walk in the Word as long as it appeals to us and what I want to do. There's a lot of I want to do. I was talking to a gentleman one time, and we was kind of joking around. You know, he was a married man. Of course, I'm a widower. I've been that way for 12 years, and that's the way it is. But we was joking around a little bit about married life, and he meant it. He said, if she don't like what I do, I'll get rid of her and get a different one. Well,
whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But see, you know,
that's the problem.
I can't say that'll send you to hell. Man, it'll make life a living hell.
It will. It will.
Now, these things, let me read another verse here.
Okay.
It says, let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence. Okay? Now, what yours say there on that?
What verse is that?
Verse 3.
Says the husband should meet his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should do the same for her husband.
Oh, no. We talking about sex? You know? Hey, it's an important part of married life. Actually, it's an important part with God, because he made Adam and Eve, and they come together, and they had babies. They had Cain and Abel, the one they talk about, but there was a lot more before they ever came on the scene, because whenever Cain done what he did and was sent away, he went to a city. Okay. It was people. Where did them babies come from? You know, Adam and Eve. Yeah. They was around a long time, kicking out a lot of babies. Okay? Now, it's an important thing to God, and he told them to replenish the earth, you know, fill it up. And they worked at it, and they were doing a good job at it. So, you know, God talks about sex. Okay? When man and woman comes together there, it's pleasure, but it's more than pleasure. In chapter 6, read that latter part we talked about. When they come together, they are joining together in unity and become one. Yep. So, now they need to come together and become one in mind. Let me go back here. Spirit, soul, and body. They come together as one in unity. But we find today, now let me go on and read the rest of this. Likewise the wife unto the husband. What we find today, where a lot of divorce and stuff goes on, is, now, being a man, I can talk to men, okay? Now, a lot of them are pretty much jerks when it comes to their wife and stuff like that, and pretty much treat them bad, and then the wife gets upset and she treats them bad. And the devices that they use, they withhold sex from one another, which in turn forces a door open, and this ought not be. Now, I want you to know, Paul's talking to the church, and hello, that's what I'm doing too. Yeah. Okay? I'm talking to the church. You know, when I talk to the world, I'm going to say, hey, Jesus died for you. Your sins are forgiven. But when it comes to nitty-gritty, Paul is talking to the church. I talk to the church pretty straight, because let me tell you, a lot of things going on in the church that ought not go on. Yep. And there's going to be a call. Now, like I said, Solomon said you can't take fire into your bosom and not be burnt. Okay? It's going to come around. And the best thing to do is put the fire out.
Yep.
You know, now, Paul talks about some other things here, and we're going to get into it in just a little bit here. And he goes on to say, the wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband, and likewise the husband hath no power over his body, but the wife. What's it saying? Come together. Don't use it as a tool. Go ahead.
There shouldn't be a power struggle. Okay?
Fact.
There in today's society, there's so much of this power struggle going on. And it's not that way, because he starts off saying the wife doesn't have authority over her own body, but the husband does. But then he says also the husband doesn't have authority over his body, but the wife does. So he's saying stay together. You know, you guys are together. Don't withhold if you're getting a fight or whatever, or you're being stupid. You know, pull your act together. Come together, be unified, and, you know.
He says there in verse 5, Trim, he says, don't defraud each other, you know.
Don't refuse to meet each other's needs unless you both agree for a short period of time to devote yourselves to prayer. Then come back together again so that Satan might not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Because like Dad said, if you're in a fight and you're just holding a grudge and you're like, well, I ain't going to do that. What's going to happen? Pretty lady's going to come along and tempt the husband. Nice looking guy's going to come along and tempt the female. And then you're just going to have a bigger disaster than you already have. So. Fact.
I want to encourage everybody to watch the movie Fireproof.
Yeah.
It's an awesome movie. Pull it up and watch it. It's an awesome movie.
Go back and on our church page, Amy just went through the Love Dare, which is based off that movie Fireproof 40-day challenge. It teaches you how to love. And that is not changing the other person. It's not about changing the other person. It's about changing yourself and how you react and how you do things.
Right. Yeah. And now Paul says, defraud not one another. What's he talking about there? A time of fasting and prayer, you know. Now, don't go on a 40-day fast and prayer. You don't have to. You might go a day, might go 3 days. Let's don't get ignorant. There's a lot of ignorant stuff going on in the body. You know, I know of some that went on a 40-day fast and all this and passed out at work and everything else. You know, ignorance is ignorant. Jesus fasted 40 days. For me, I don't have to.
Yeah.
I can fast a day. I can fast 3 days. Or you know what?
You don't even have to fast at all.
No. I like coffee. If I want to get down to nitty-gritty, I can fast coffee for 2 or 3 days. Just one thing or all. It's up to you.
You can fast social media. You can fast, anything.
Just what he's saying is, don't go beyond measure and come back together as one. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, Paul says, I've heard people say this, and women especially, and they kind of get a little bit on the mad side, which, hey, it's all right. Paul was not married, never was married, didn't want to be married. His heart was sold out to God. I'm not saying married people's hearts are not sold out to God. I'm saying this is what he could live with. And he says it right here. You need to read chapter 7 over again. You can read it in King James, or I've got this here contemporary English version. It explains it real well, real good. He explains about this, and then he goes on to explain about unbelieving husbands, unbelieving wives, and I don't know how to really word this other than, if you're a believing wife and your husband don't want to believe, but he's okay to stay with you, don't cause you no problems, he said, go on, don't worry about it. You're believing and will sanctify you and your kids. But he says if they don't want to be with you because you are a Christian, he said, let them go. Okay? Let them go.
Yeah.
All right? So I encourage you to read this and study it out and understand it. You know, some of this stuff is hard to understand in certain translations. Now, I like King James, but I encourage you to get some different translations. I like King James because I do. Okay? Yeah. Young's translation is the one translated right straight from the original Greek. I got one, but what I got, what I can find is that the print is so small that I really have a trouble. That's why I don't use it much here when we're making these. Okay? Now, read the first part all the way down to 24. Paul addresses the husband and the wife and divorce and all that, about believing husband, believing wife, and this and that. Now, go down on verse 25. Okay? He talks to unmarried people.
Yep.
Yeah. If you've ever been unmarried, you've had problems. You know, teenagers, they have problems adjusting to all the hormones that goes on.
Yeah.
Paul addresses that. He kind of encourages them to hang on. But then he says later on, now, they got married real young back here, real young.
Yeah.
Don't do that today because it does not work, okay?
Yeah.
Been there, done it. It does not work, okay? You can have your girlfriend or boyfriend, just keep yourself, keep yourself, okay?
Yeah.
But he goes on to say, now, if you're trying to walk with God and you're trying to do it like I'm doing it, I don't have to be married, but you can't, you struggle and you struggle trying to get this way or that way. He says, give it up, man, get married. It's okay. You know,
Yeah.
It's okay. But, and that's what he's talking about, verse 25 all the way through 40, I believe it is. Yeah, he's talking about them. Research it, look it over, help your kids, you know, to understand what's going on, help them to overcome these things. Don't kill them over something. I'm using that.
Don't be afraid to talk to your kids because I know it can be awkward and embarrassing and whatever, but if you don't talk to your kids and you don't teach them, the world's going to. And you don't want that. You don't want to lose your kids to the world. So you got to break through the awkwardness and get real with them. Just be real. That's all, because really that's all they want. I'm dealing with that right now. I have a teenage son. You know, I've got my daughter. She just turned 12. And let me tell you, my face probably turns 10 shades of red when I'm first talking to him. But you know what? The more that I do it and the more that they see that I'm being genuine and I'm being real with them, the more that they're listening and the more that they're getting it. You see what I'm saying? I'm not going to lose my kids to the world. I'm not going to let the world raise them.
Right, and that's what we've been doing.
Yeah.
If you don't think so, go to school.
Yeah.
Okay? Watch the TV. You know, see some of this stuff that goes on in there, and you'll understand what we're talking about. And what we're trying to do our best to do is encourage you. Follow the laws, biblical laws. Okay? It'll save you a lot of heartache. Yeah. Follow the biblical laws. Arlene and I, before we got married, we sat down and we didn't really just sit down like this, but we would be driving around or going somewhere when we were dating, and we would be talking about how things was. We'd both been married before, and things had fallen all apart. So we was laying things out pretty hard and heavy. This is how I look at things, and she would say and tell me how she looked at things. We would discuss, you know, our past, and we make agreements. I will not treat you that way. I will not react that way, and this and that, you know. We sit down. So it's a good thing to sit down. Hey, it don't just fall into place. You've
got to have those discussions, and you've got to lay your cards on the table. And you've got to say, this is where I'm coming from. This is how I see things. This is where I'm coming from. And then the other person has to do the same.
They taught us in one denomination, it's a 50-50 thing. No, it's not. It's 100% thing. Now, if you're just using somebody, taking advantage of somebody, well, I can take advantage. Look out, honey. It's going to end. It's going to come to a head, okay? Now, that very last verse Paul put there, the very last, he closes this. Now, you got to remember, when Paul wrote this, he didn't have chapter and verse, okay?
This was a letter.
Mm-hmm. And it's a big letter. But chapter and verse here I'm going to use before we start on chapter 8. He says, I think also that I have the Spirit of God. In other words, he says, I think God is telling me this is how it needs to be. And, it needs to be that way. Husband and wives come together, man.
And Dad said, this mirrors our relationship with Jesus. Because we're considered the bride, right?
Yeah.
We're considered the bride, and Christ is the groom. So,
Also, Jerusalem over in Revelation is referred to as the bride of Christ coming down. But Jesus is the head, and all that. Yeah, go ahead.
So, the marriage relationship, we choose to love Jesus. We have to choose to love each other. And we have to show up regardless of if it gets hard.
And there will be problems. There will be financial problems. There'll be emotional problems. You're not going to wake up every morning and look at that pretty thing, whether it's husband or wife, and think, that's the prettiest thing in the world I ever married. Because I tell you, we don't look that good in the morning before we comb our hair.
Yeah.
Okay? So it has to be based on the spirit side of it. The
it can't be feelings.
Part, not just the physical part.
Yeah, it can't be feelings.
Okay. I'm going to shut up right there, Trina. You
got
any more?
No.
Okay. We're going to close it right there. Next week we're going on chapter 8, things offered to idols, this and that. We'll explain some of that stuff just a little bit. But research this. Find out for yourself. Don't take our word for it.
Yeah.
If you want a happy life, get in God. Yeah. Walk with God. Okay? God loves you. We love you. God's peace be upon you.
See you next week.